What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and thanks so much for tuning in to what is going to be a favorites video. You read the title, it's that time, so let's go ahead and get into some beauty favorites. I want to talk fashion, maybe some podcasts and TV shows. Let's just go ahead and dive in. Okay, so this first thing will probably come as no surprise to anyone because I've mentioned it multiple times throughout videos this month. It is the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Setting Spray. I use this to prep my skin before I apply foundation, to set my foundation, especially once I've had like setting powder and blush and bronzer, all my powder products on my face. I've also used this to foil eyeshadows. It's incredible at making your makeup last. And I like it better, I've said this before, than my Huda Beauty Resting Boss Face because I find it to be way less heavily fragranced. Now, it is still fragranced, and I do think that other people might think it's more fragranced than I do, just based on how I've heard other people review this across the interwebs, but I don't find it nearly as bad as the Huda Beauty Resting Boss Face. So this is clearly my new favorite go-to anytime I am doing my makeup. For foundation, it is really a tie between the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Foundation. My shade, by the way, is number 5, as well as the Range Beauty foundations, and I mix two shades. One is Dune, and the other is Coconut Milk, these two right here. But most recently, so it's not like a full month of August favorites, but in the month of August, I have found that I really actually like a foundationless routine. And that is to prep my skin with something glowy like the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter. Any sort of glowy base will work though. And then I just go in with my concealer. And granted, my concealer is the Pat McGrath Skin Fetish Sublime Concealer in L7 is my shade, but it's a full and buildable coverage, so just a few little dots in my under eye area, 2 on my forehead on either side, around my nose where I get red, and on my chin, like literally 3 or 4 dots on my chin where I get acne, and that's blended out. That's all I've really been wearing. And if I do need more coverage, like today, I had some more discoloration, like bags in my under eye area, so I did put like a dab or 2 on either eye and blended that in, but that's all I'm wearing on my skin today. I'm not wearing any foundation. And I made the switch because what I was finding was I would put my foundation on and it'd look like a good amount, but then as I layered powder and bronzer and blush and just more and more product over top, my makeup was looking a lot heavier than I had anticipated it doing. And of course, you could always use less foundation. That's totally a solution. But I decided to go with concealer or try concealer instead first because that doe foot applicator I find for me is a really good way to moderate the amount of product that I use without having to think about it. Because it's just a little doe foot, I really have to layer it up, like consciously layer it up in order to overdo it. Whereas foundation, a lot of the foundations that I use, like when I'm mixing these two, I'm always going to have more product than I need. The Charlotte Tilbury, the pump is good, but it's hard to get a half a pump. It's like all or nothing with this thing. And so I find that if I have the foundation out, like on my little acrylic block to use or on the back of my hand, I'm more inclined to feel obligated to use it. So a doe foot, something like this, makes it easier to slowly build as opposed to potentially overdo it. And really, it's more so the technique that I've been liking. You could do this with whatever your concealer is, but because of the kind of coverage, I like to even out my skin tone, especially with the texture, the acne and redness issues that I have. I prefer something that's more full coverage, but you can use whatever you have on hand and what works for you. Okay, now let's talk eyes. This first one took me by surprise. This is the Colored Rain Smoke Show palette. I got this when I bought the Trend Mood box that was focused solely on Black-owned beauty brands, and I was ecstatic to finally try a product from Colored Rain because I hadn't before. I'll be a little honest though, when I first saw this, I was nervous that it would be too basic. Like it'd be so basic that there'd be nothing in here that made me reach for it and grab it, like as the first thing that comes to mind when I typically think towards textures or fun and unique shades and things like that. And so I was a little nervous that while it might be nice, there wouldn't be anything in here that really just like pulled me toward it. And boy, was I wrong. This is a really gorgeous palette. There are 5 matte shades and 1 satiny shimmer shade in here. The black smokescreen is the satiny shimmer shade. The rest are matte shades. You get excellent basics, a light cream, a light peach, a medium deep cool brown, and then a medium deep reddish brown, and then a beautiful deep matte matte emerald / forest green over here. All of them blend beautifully together. They are all essentials, but I've also found that with the next thing that I'm going to talk about in my favorites, it's the perfect palette. I'm also wearing it today because it is essential to recreating a look that I was inspired by a TV show favorite that I'll talk about later. But yes, I am so impressed with this palette, especially with the pigmentation, how creamy and smooth the shadows are. There's no skipping, there's no chalkiness, but especially with this smokescreen shade, it is so intensely black, so layerable and buildable, and it's so opaque and so easy to work with. So I really love this palette. And then the thing that I love to layer over top, this will not surprise anyone, especially if you caught my last video, which was a review of these guys, the Chromium Liquid Shadows from Natasha Denona. I love multichrome shadows. I love liquid shadows. I was hoping these would be a slam dunk, but I was a little skeptical because Natasha Denona's last liquid shadow formula was kind of a dud. Fortunately, that is not the case with these, and I'm so glad because one, they are Natasha Denona priced, but also because they're so beautiful. Like the color selection, I think she did such a good job at combining the shades with each of these. Like they all, of course, are multifaceted, but the colors inside them are very complementary and wearable with each other, and they're just so gorgeous. Today I started with Dragonfly, which is a pink with a gold shift that then kind of goes into like a soft blue of sorts. And it ended up being too pink for the coloring of what I'm wearing, which is more of like earth toned neutrals. So then I went in over top with, which is what is my favorite shade of all the 5 shades she launched in here, which is Infra Nude. And this is like a pale pink champagne that shifts then into a green gold and then shifts further into a blue, let's call it a blue turquoise. It's such a gorgeous shade. Depending on how you're looking at it, the lighting that you're under, it can either be like a nude, but then it can also shift into something very dramatic, as, I mean, really is the case with all of these, but this will really sneak up on you. And so it is my favorite shade, and I just layered that right over top of Dragonfly to get the look that you see here today with, of course, the Smoke Show palette underneath. Then, of course, I am still loving my Lash Glue liner pen. Did a review of these. This one is from Kiss, but Moitié Cosmetics also launched some. I really like them all, but you can go check out the review for more info on those. You just do a quick swipe on your upper lash line and then apply some lashes. And today I'm wearing my Ardell Wispies. I really love how easy they make applying false lashes. And the last thing for the eyes is actually an eyeliner. And this feels very boring, but I realized as I was kind of gathering my favorites for the month that this, even beyond the month of August, when I want a brown liner, which is almost always for my eyeshadow looks, this is the one that I go to, and I've never really talked about it, at least certainly recently. It's from Collab, and so you can get this at Sally Beauty. It's their Killer Kohl self-sharpening eye pencil, and the brown is the shade Knockout. And what I love about these is they have a self-sharpening top, and they're not the first to do this. A brand that I don't even know if it's around anymore called Styly Style. I talked about them a long time ago here on the channel. Then Smashbox came out with some, and now these are virtually identical to the Smashbox ones, which I don't know if they make anymore, but doesn't matter because now you have these from Collab. And the premise is that the top sharpens your eyeliner. It's this ultra fine cream eyeliner, tiny little tip, but when you close the top, it will automatically sharpen it for you. So you have a fresh, sharp tip every time you go in to apply, which I find is really nice, especially in the lower lash line when you're working so close to your eye and in a sensitive spot. You don't want a dull pencil, especially when you're using like sharpenable wooden pencils. Those are the worst when you don't sharpen them enough and you like catch a little bit of that wood in your waterline. I just want to tear up thinking about it, but not with this guy. This constantly stays sharp. It's nice and creamy. It lasts as long as a liner will last for me in my waterline. I honestly have issues with most liners lasting in my waterline area, and it's not waterproof, but personally I think that's a good thing because sometimes I'll overcorrect to make the lasting power more. And what I find with my contacts is that if it smudges, if waterproof cream or gel eyeliner smudges on my contacts, it doesn't come off for the rest of the day, and that is far more annoying than having eyeliner melt away throughout the day, because then I just end up with like a foggy lens and it ruins my contacts. I have to change them out. So it's not waterproof, but it's as long lasting as it gets for me, in short. And I just really love that you get a fresh, sharp tip every time. Okay, last tip for beauty. Let's talk lips. I've kind of been hopping around amongst a lot of different formulas and shades, but the one constant for me has been this guy from the Wonder Woman collection with Revlon. It is their Ultra HD Vinyl Lip Gloss, a formula that I have loved since the day it came out, but the shade in particular that I have been loving is called Birthday Suit. And I don't know if this is exclusive to the Wonder Woman collection. I'm really hoping it's not limited edition because it's an amazing shade. The reason that I have been liking it so much is it's very similar to my natural lip color, but a little bit brighter and more mauve. And of course you get that ultra high shine glossy finish to the lips. So anytime I'm wearing an eye look or, anything sort of emphasized on my face that isn't my lips, and I want something on my lips to, finish the look off, but without competing with or overwhelming the rest of the look, this has been my go-to shade. I feel like I have one of those kinds of shades in my favorites each month, but I feel like it's always good to have at least one of those kinds of shades for yourself on standby, you know what I mean? So that has been that shade for me this month. Okay, now that's it for beauty. Let's talk about fashion. I basically am just going to point to my recent trunk club video. You should definitely go give that a watch. I ordered a trunk club this month and I found a ton of amazing things that I really love, but I also did some shopping in the Nordstrom anniversary sale and I am going to make a separate video about that, but I'm still waiting for pieces to come in. So in the meantime, I will just talk about some of the comfy, cozy leisure things that I have been loving. And that has been these sweatpants. I think they are from the brand Sweaty Betty, which is the first I've heard a lot about them, but never tried them. And these sweatpants are amazing. They are so comfy. They're high-waisted and they have a drawstring. So I bought mine a little bit big, maybe a little bit too big. I'll note down below whether I got a large or an extra large, but it is a little bit too big because I noticed that they kind of ride down closer to my hips, and I think they're supposed to ride higher to the waist, at least based on where the ankles kind of fall. They have more not cinched, but tighter fitted fabric down around the ankles. So I think you can pull them up and they're a little bit tighter, but I do find myself having to tie them around my waist more often than not. But then again, it's not the worst thing in the world because they are so high-waisted, it makes them comfortable to not have. I've been so used to having tighter fitting, more yoga pant type of leisure loungewear, and it's so nice to finally have something that's a lot looser, a lot more cozy feeling, and it doesn't ride around the hips. It comes all the way up to like the belly button area, which just makes it more comfortable for lounging, although I really wear them to work like all the time. So they're my business attire. But I know that's the case for a lot of people lately, so if you're looking for a new business suit, check out those pants. Oh, and then to go with those, I also got two different tops. They might both also be from Sweaty Betty, but they're just very basic tanks. One has a super cute cutout detail in the back, but they're very soft. They fall really nicely. I got them both in large just as a size reference, and they're just a nice kind of companion to go with those sweatpants. But you could also throw on a basic tee, a shrug as it starts getting colder outside. It's really, comfy. There are no rules with your loungewear, right? Now onto podcasts. So I've previously mentioned loving Supernatural by Ashley Flowers, and I still love it. It's a podcast that every time she uploads an episode, I listen to it. She relatively recently, came out with a new podcast called Very Presidential, and I am just as hooked on that one. As you could probably guess from the title of the podcast, it's about American presidents, but it goes into the details that you either didn't know, weren't told, wasn't paying attention for in history class. Just super interesting, outrageous, all the things that you just didn't know about previous American presidents. It's fascinating. It's a little bit like the podcast Stuff You Missed in History Class, like those kinds of things where, you probably heard about it, but maybe not in the details that she's talking about it in this podcast, but exclusively for US presidents. So I really love that podcast. Then the other podcast I really love is called True Spies. And again, the title probably gives it away. It is about real life spies talking about their, mostly about specific incidences. I guess some of them talk about long-term involvement and working in their specific projects or sectors or whatever the situation might be. But it's fascinating because you actually get to hear the stories from the spies themselves. It's told in a really interesting, engaging sort of way where they're telling you the story from a first person standpoint, and they kind of, the podcast producers, I guess, fill in the blanks with the other storytelling elements. And so it just tells this really complete and multifaceted like you're there. It makes you feel like you experience this with that person all over again. And the stories are super fascinating. I mean, how often do you get to hear those kinds of stories not in a history book? You know what I mean? So really love that one as well. Now last, let's talk shows. I have been loving Glow Up, the Britain's Next Makeup Star, I think that's what it's called. They just uploaded season 2 onto Netflix. And so Andrew loves to watch it with me. We've been making our way through each of those episodes. And that is actually what has inspired kind of the eye look that I'm wearing today. Val Garland, mega makeup artist and judge on Glow Up, wears this incredible, dramatic, and yet very simple eye makeup that you can even see under her big dramatic glasses. And I have been obsessed with it for the past few, well, I mean, she wears it in almost every episode. So every time I watch it, I think, I've got to figure out if I can try that. The interesting thing about it is, I mean, beyond it being simple and yet dramatic, is that the liner on her lower lash line doesn't seem to connect in the inner or outer corners. And so that's what I kind of tried to do here today. And I think it ended up being like a faux fox eye recreation. I'm not sure it worked out. It was fun to do though, and I kind of like the end result, but it is no Val Garland, but you always gotta try. Wow, and that is actually the end of everything that I had to talk about this month. That kind of snuck up on me. But as always, I would love to hear what your favorites have been. Beauty, fashion, podcasts, books, movie, you name it. Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye guys.